Hi, it's Len from Hero Technical Solutions. In this video, we're going to talk about the difference between several of the core modules in CRM to make sure we've got a good handle on what information belongs where and what the flow is as we're keeping track of our contacts and potential deals, and things like when do I use a lead versus the deals module? What does that look like? So let's talk that through. So we're going to start off with the contacts module. Okay, contacts are the people that are in our business. And to help illustrate that, I'm actually going to go ahead and bring up some note cards here. So in our system, we've got contacts. And so a contact is a person. A person has a name. They have an email address. They have other contact information. And so you'll have contacts in your system. The accounts are the company that those contacts belong to. So I can have an account that has a single contact. Technically, you can have an account with no contacts, although that's probably not very useful because when we are dealing with someone, we're doing a quote, we're having a meeting, there is a human being involved. But we can have an account that has multiple contacts. So you could be dealing with multiple people on a sale. You could have a primary contact. Maybe there's an on-site manager, someone in accounting. So the idea is that we have company information on one record and then the related contacts. And I'll show you what that looks like in CRM. The idea behind that is that it can kind of flow all up into one place. So even if I have multiple deals or tasks in CRM with different contacts, when I look at the account, I can see that. And then deals are where we put potential business. And so the reason that deals are a separate module is because hopefully you have repeat business with a customer. So there is let's say you're an HVAC company and you do a quote for them on replacing their furnace. And then 2 years later, they might need an air conditioner, or there's a maintenance plan that you would give them a quote on. And because each deal can track through stages and ultimately be won or lost, we have a separate record for that. So each contact in your system, we'll usually have one deal to start, the first quote that we create, the proposal that we put together, but over time, they may have multiple deals. Okay, so contacts are the people, accounts are the companies they belong to, deals, or sometimes we might call them opportunities, or old school Zoho, they were referred to as potentials, all means the same thing. These are the individual potential business that you have with them. And generally this deal will be associated with both a contact and the account. And I'll show you what that looks like too. Exception to that might be if you are using Zoho for B2C, you might not use it. You might not have an account. You just have a person with a name and no company associated. Okay, so those are the core modules so far. Now, as you're adding contacts to your system, that list is going to grow, and it might be helpful to keep that list pretty clean. And so I'll tell you, two different ways that you could set this up. You may or may not decide to use leads, and I'll tell you about leads and some criteria for how to decide. So a lead is a separate record on its own, and it's someone that we are not necessarily that engaged with. So for example, if you have a newsletter sign up on your website and you've got email addresses and you send out the newsletter, but they've never called in, you've never had a meeting with them, you've never put a quote together, that list might get big, and we might not want to put them all in with our contacts and have to create an account for each one. So if you get a lot of leads that may not get too far in engagement with you and your business, then we'd like to keep them separate in the leads module, and then we will convert them over when we decide that it's the appropriate time. And that's going to vary from business to business. So generally that would be when you've got more interaction than them, existing on a list. Maybe they've booked in a call with you, you've had a meeting, they've phoned in, there's some potential business. For others, it's when they want to create a quote, or it looks like there's an opportunity that may lead to a quote. We bring them over, and I'll show you what that looks like in CRM as well. But conceptually, this is a bucket for keeping track of people that we may or may not ultimately end up doing business with. Another good use for leads is, if you do trade shows or other events where maybe they provide you with a list of 500 attendees afterwards, we don't necessarily want to dump them all into our contacts list, because then when you search for someone with a more common name, you may get multiple results, and it's just really nice to keep this a little tighter and more organized. So you would bring those 500 attendees into leads, and then maybe you're reaching out to them from there. You're sending follow-up emails, and as you get responses, you're going to convert them over and create accounts and contacts, and then ultimately deals. Okay, so 2 camps there. If you don't have a lot of leads, and when someone is in your world, you're talking to them, there's probably a quote or a proposal happening, you may not need to use leads. And I'll show you how you can categorize things with contacts so we can still deal intelligently with customers versus prospects. But so just kind of keep that in mind. So if you have a lot of people who fill in contact information on the website that might not turn out, or you've got a list that you've bought that you're calling through, you've got a newsletter sign up, things like that, that's a good case for using leads separate than contacts. All right, so let's go back and just see what this looks like. I've got a demo system here, and so if I create a new contact, okay, so I'll fill in first name here. This will be Mary, last name Christmas. Okay, and then I have to put an account name. So just note, on the contact records, there isn't a separate field for the company. It's actually a link to an account record that will get created. And if you start typing this is going to be from the North Pole Gift Company, it'll start to search and see if there's a company that matches that already. And if not, I'll go ahead and create a new account. Little pop-up comes up here. And if I know their details, I will put that in because that'll help me out. Okay, so now I'm going to create that as an account record. And when you're filling this in, get as much detail in as you can. So hey, if I've got email, phone number, now is the most likely time to ever have somebody put that information in. So do that once and be done with it. Okay, so now I'm going to save it. And so now I have a contact record. I have an account that's associated with it. And I can also add multiple contacts. You can see I've got my account, I've got contacts. And when you are customizing CRM, the way that I want you to think about it is, if you've got information to keep track of, does it belong to the account? So is it company level information, or is it specific to the person, or is it specific to the deal? Okay, so if it's what product line are they interested in, you could argue that could be an account thing, or that could be something that goes on the deal. So maybe if you're a doors and window company on this deal, you might add a field for the categories for that quote, and maybe it's just windows. If it's something like what industry are they in, that's an account field. Website is an account field. Email address, favorite color, food allergies, things like that, those are all contact fields. So you want to make sure those are in the right place. Okay. And then from here, if we want to create a deal, we always want to go to the contact record first, lowest common denominator, because I want this deal associated with a contact and an account. So I'm on Mary's record. I can see the account there. I'll create a new deal. And so this might be quote on replacement doors and windows. Because I started with Mary's record, it's automatically associated with the account. I'll fill in a closing date. I know that they're looking to do this ordering quickly. So I'm going to put this closing date 2 weeks out. And the amount in here, depending on your quoting process, this will likely get filled in later on. For now, this is my best guess based on what we've talked through and how many doors and windows. We put in $4,000. Okay, we won't go through all the stages. We've got a separate video covering that, how we set up stages with deals, but just for now, to show that a deal is created. Okay, so now I have that deal here on Mary's record. Also, if you go to the account record, you will see the contacts there and you will see deals. So it rolls up to the account level. Okay, so now, how do leads come in here? So leads, as I mentioned, is a list of people who may or may not get as far as being more engaged with the business and make contact. if I'm putting a lead in, or if this lead is being created, through a form on my website, through sign up for a newsletter, I'll put this in. Now, note, on a lead, there isn't a separate record for the company. It's just a field where you put this in. So this is the Acme 3D Printing Company, and this is Joe Designer, CEO. Okay, if you fill in as much details as you have, this is all customizable as always in Zoho, and then I will save this. Now, maybe Joe's on my newsletter list, and one day Joe replies to an email about an offer that I have, and now I'm going to set up a meeting. So now I will want to convert Joe's record. And when you convert, it's going to create an account record based on the company name. It's going to create a contact based on the lead name. And at the same time, I can also create a deal, which is usually going to make sense. So again, this is something you want to standardize for your company. So you don't have 3 different people on the sales team doing this willy-nilly. You will agree, here is when we convert a lead, and here is when we create a deal. In this case, if I said, I'm going to put in a deal for everyone that I have a meeting with, I will do it. Otherwise, if I said, hey, let's have the meeting first, and then based on the results of that, I may create a deal. So I can decide if I want to create a deal at the same time or not. You can see if I check that off, I can fill in an estimated value. I can put a closing date in and hit convert, and then I create all 3 at once. In my case, I'm not going to do it this time. Oh, and okay, I clicked the convert button. I also clicked on the dictionary or something there, but you get the idea. Now it says, hey, I've created this account, I've created the contact, and I can either go back to my leads or I can go to Joe's contact record now. And you can see that his details carried across. There is a process to set up the mapping for that to make sure that the fields from the lead come over to the contact, to the account, and to the deal appropriately. Okay, so if we have a large list and we don't want them to clutter up our contacts, that's what we will use the leads module for. Now, if you are in the camp where you don't need a separate holding tank for the leads, maybe you've got a lower number of leads, people call in, you're usually talking to them, you're getting into a quote or setting up a meeting right away. You can simplify things by not using the leads module. Makes email marketing a little easier because I'm only syncing contacts in and I'm just working with one less module in the system. Okay, simplicity is better if we don't need the leads. So then you might say, well, Len, how do I keep track of who's a lead and who's a contact if I dump them all into the contacts module? And that is where you may want to add in a field to keep track of the contact type. Again, I put a little tooltip in here. We will segment this for sales and marketing. So by putting the contact type in, not only does it indicate whether they're a customer or not, but this will help you for email marketing. If you want to send out one kind of email to anyone who's a lead, or a different email to someone who's a customer, or even a partner, then we can keep track of it here. Okay, so I've got in here, I can choose, are they a customer? Are they a prospect? Please do not put lead and prospect and have half your team use each. It will make your life easier to edit this list down and get that right so that we're using one consistent term. But in this case, Joe is a prospect so far. Now, if you want to get a little fancier with this too, I won't cover it in this video, but just to plant the seed, you could actually have this contact type also exist at the account level, and then it copies down to the related contacts through workflow automation. Right? That means when I change the account, if I've got 3 contacts, they all update at the same time. The other thing we like to do sometimes is we set up a workflow rule so that if I close a deal, then the contact type automatically gets set to customer. Okay, so there we've got it. We've got an overview of leads, contacts, accounts, and deals. And hopefully that gives you some clarity and helps you in your CRM setup. All right, thanks.